4, 3, 2, 1. Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
And as the music cues and gets louder and then softer, we start episode 41 on this amazing day, Chris.
Oh, we're doubling it off right off the beginning.
We are. and that's the best part of this whole thing is that I could say that, and for those who are following along,
playing the amazing drinking game.
You've got to play the amazing drinking game. Because we don't know where it'll lead us or how much we'll drink.
How bad the last segment will be.
We don't know that. But Hannah's only had 3 shots. Maybe 4, but probably 3.
Well, we got some. I'm drinking some Kalamazoo Bell's Brewery IPA, so it's not just the lighthearted stuff. It's pretty good. I mean, I'm a big fan of that India Pale Ale.
Yeah. And there's actually a new brewery that my buddy owns called, I think it's called Trailblazing or something like that. I'll have to look it up. But I got a buddy that opened a brewery in Allendale, so I'll have to get you some of their beer, and then you can tote them right on the show.
Yeah.
They're local, great, nice guy. A little bit libertarian leaning for my likes, but he's from Hudsonville. What do you expect?
Well, we've got a lot of really great stuff in town and along those lines. Like, if anybody's just like, what is interesting in West Michigan? I don't know. If you're not coming here for the intense, painful conservatism, you might want to come here and have a few drinks because we have a bunch of that too.
Yeah, because you get into the inner city here, right? And there's a lot of great stuff.
It's
we
bohemian.
have medical marijuana in Michigan, and we have decriminalization. We have, I don't know, at least in Grand Rapids alone, I think there's like 20 or so breweries that circle around here. And so you can't pass it up. And then we have some night entertainment. We have a lot of good local bands. Hell, Founders does a thing where they bring local bands in all the time, and you can go drink their beer right at their shop.
They've got the intersection bar right next door that has all the big concerts and stuff. Welcome to the Michigan M Live Pure Michigan podcast. Yeah. It sounds like we've completely gone over.
If you haven't been to Michigan yet, make sure you come over and check out, because at Pure Michigan,
at least we got out of the boring old guy garden podcast. Now we're into the tourism podcast. We're moving up in the world.
And say maybe next we'll be into the secular podcast or the politics podcast. God only knows.
Yeah, we're all over the place. And
we are.
I mean, that's kind of the fun. It's discovering where it is. It's like a fortune cookie or something. You never know exactly what the hell we're going to get when we open the show up.
You don't. And if you would like to support us in doing whatever we do, we'll entertain for an hour and a half, bring some political commentary, religious commentary, science commentary. If you enjoy what we do, make sure you go over to our Patreon page and drop, I don't know, $1 an episode, $2 an episode, $5 an episode. All it does is help us, and then when you hit a certain level, we just donate it all to charity anyway, so it's not like we're taking it and putting it in our pockets.
No.
We basically just need to cover the cost of the show to run on Spreaker, and then the rest of it goes into charity from there. And so this year, we got to look at how much money we got, and we're going to be matching it and sending it out to charity on our 1-year anniversary. So.
And if you don't like what we're doing, if you come to our show and it's like, okay, this one segment was good, but I didn't really like anything else you guys did, let us know. Let us know what the segment was that you liked.
Because we might take Hannah out back and shoot him in the head, or we might I just might poison him a little bit and see where it goes from there. I did get some LSD the other day. Yeah. So you might be better off bringing your own beer from now on.
Well, maybe that, and also if we get told that we don't really mesh with what everybody's looking for, and they just like, we don't like what you're doing at all, you should just not do it. Because the one I guess review that we got the guy who was just complaining that we weren't all pure atheism stuff. So,
and we have moved away from it. But if there's a segment you like, or there's something you want to hear, or if you want us to do more crazy shit Chris says again, or more marijuana science segments, or a little bit less politics, send us an email at cellardoorskeptics@gmail.com. You could tweet at us at cellardoorskep, or you can find us on Facebook /cellardoorskeptics and say whatever you got. Send us a message. But we don't want to spend too much time on the intro of the show, because Chris Hanna has already jacked off for about the first 5 minutes of this. And we have a couple of really important topics, and it's going to be a little bit more politically driven this episode, because we all know there's something going on in Turkey. And I think it affects our economy here at some point, and it's going to affect how the whole Trump campaign is going to go, basically, because we're seeing foreshadowing of what could happen. And I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, and I don't want to say that.
That's my job.
That's your job. I'm usually a little bit more rational than you are, and a little bit more mainstream in that. But reading what's going on and talking with friends that we have over there, it's pretty bad. And so we're going to talk about Turkey in just a second. We're also got a great science segment tonight about bacteria and cancer cells. And our science segments are going to be focused either on religion or probably scientific cancer research for the next couple of weeks, only because we had a dear friend of ours, Samantha Bannister, who went and passed away last week, and we had her funeral, and we've been kind of grieving. So you may get a little bit more science that talks about bacteria and cancer over the next thing. But we're going to close with a hilarious note. I guess a kind of hilarious note. We're going to talk about the Donald Trump coronation at the RNC. And yes, I'm nominating it the coronation because it had everything. It had a whole wide spectrum. I mean, I want to get into it right now. I just really do, because I watched quite a few speeches, and I rewatched some of them, and I watched some of the dancing and the music, and it's like they had jesters, they had musicians, they had people come up and rally around Trump. They had people who shouldn't even be on the stage talking about Trump. They did. It was insane what the RNC Convention was.
Did they have snake oil salesmen?
Yeah, of course they did.
I'm gonna guess they did.
I'm
gonna guess. That, and they had duck call guys.
Yeah, that's snake oil right there, dude. I mean, he's trying to sell his religion like you wouldn't fucking believe.
All right, so I mean, let's dive into Turkey then. We'll start off with Turkey. Yes. This has been something that I've been following really closely, mostly because I know some people there. We actually interviewed one guy, E-Ray, who was talking about artificial intelligence on the show. He's from Turkey, and he is just openly and adamantly against all of this stuff. I mean, he's relatively a public person. He's got a decent couple of corporations and companies and startups and artificial intelligence. He's a pretty important fella in the science industries and stuff in Turkey. And so he when I asked him to talk about politics and stuff, he's like, I don't know, it's kind of a tough thing for me to go on, shows and talk about that. But I've got some other friends that are they're just regular people. They're out there in Turkey, and I've been talking with them about what it's like on the ground, just from the normal person's perspective. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. We'll also talk about all of the media coverage. So we've got 5-6 links here that are covering everything from what the Turkish government's doing to reprogram the entire country, to the similarities between ISIS and Erdogan, and what Erdogan's describing as how that coup went. So I guess, where do you want to start with this one, man? You want to go right into what caused it?
Yeah, so I guess, I'll be honest, I didn't know a lot about the Turkey situation before we started, the research on this. Wasn't something that was on my radar until you mentioned it last week, and then all the news started coming out, and my phone blows up. And so then I was like, holy shit, all right, I got to look into this. And we have a bunch of good articles. And I'll be honest, we are going to quote some CNN articles, but it's not the whole gist of the show. But what it is a coup, right? That's what happened. They had some sort of a coup that seemed like they had taken over everything. And in our world here in America, that would be kind of like if all the creationists came out, right, and just said, we're taking over the military and we're going to make everybody this way. And you're like, well, hold on a second. What is the coup, and why would they be rallying against it? Because in our country, the first thing I would ask if this happened is, why? What caused this? Is this something that we could see? Look at the South Park episode, or the South Park movie, Chris, where they talk about the Canada fight, right? And all of a sudden, America wants to go to war with Canada. and they do, and Satan's rise, and he's in the background pulling strings and singing songs and, doing stuff with Saddam. And, but the big thing in that, right, when we look at that movie and we look at the analogy behind it, is they are creating a coup to go after Canada. And they're saying, fuck you guys. And all of a sudden, this little revolutionary group goes, hey, we're going to go spoil this because it's wrong. So when I think of a coup, the first thing I thought of is, why are they going against the government? Is the government that bad? Because look at our country, and look what's happening right now. I mean, we got Hillary and Trump. And for those of you listening that love Hillary, just so you know, my problem is not with all of her politics, but with her lying and her deceit. She's just being like a normal politician.
Yeah.
And she's conservative for me. But think about it. If somebody were to rise up, let's say the Bernieites, let's say Hillary gets in, the Bernieites rise up and create a coup, the first thing I'd want to know is why and what will this solve? So tell us, Hannah, what was your take on what the coup was and what they were rallying against?
Okay, so the coup itself
It's not coup, it's coup. You didn't correct me
coup.
this whole time. I went on for 2 minutes and you just let the coup go.
Yeah, I figured it was a good thing to do. I figured I'd let you continue talking about a chicken coop or something, whatever you think happens with the government. No, okay, so a coup. What happened here was it's just an interesting. Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, I believe is how you say his name. He's the founder of Turkey. He's the guy who, in May 1881 to November 10th, 1938, is when he was alive. But he was a Turkish army officer and revolutionary and the first president of Turkey. He's credited with being the founder of the Republic of Turkey. Well, anyways, he started the country off very secularly. It was not an Islamic republic. It was not an Islamic state. It was very secular, and it's an awesome foundation in its location. In this bedrock and of all these problematic states. And so what's traditionally has happened is the government of Turkey has had these Islamic leanings, and it's had these pushes and where they keep trying to make it a little bit more Islamic, a little bit more theocratic. And the military has always maintained this secular attitude, this organizational secular nature. And the military, in this case, rose up because Erdogan, the president now, dictator, king a la carte, whatever you want to call him, He's trying to make the country incredibly Islamic. He's trying to make it very theocratic. So the military and the guys who would go up against the big dog, they tried to overthrow. This is the narrative that we've been told. And so there's a couple of ways people are taking this. They're saying that, are we sure? Are we absolutely sure this is actually what happened? And this is where the conspiracy stuff is, and my skeptical nature, but just a general distrust of everything I hear in the media these days. We don't know if it was legitimately the military that went to take over or if it's just some kind of false flag. And I distrust false flags because they're so incredibly improbable that everybody would do what they're supposed to do. But assuming that everything is true, the military, it was just traditionally secular, basically rose up and tried to stop an Islamic president dictator from further making the country more and more. And apparently the Erdogan forces succeeded in quelling the revolution.
And so the one question I have, and I agree with you, there's been talk on several different websites that, maybe the coup was fake, right? And there I said it right this time. Maybe it was fake. Maybe it was planted, by the regime. And so I did a little bit further research into this, right? And I started looking into what happened with the president, and how all these nominations and all these different things are coming up. And they did what was called, and I don't remember the exact wording for it, but they did what was called like a recall type vote, where he basically got to push whoever he wanted to push into power. And I then sat down and said, okay, well, hold on. And Chris, correct me because I can't pronounce this guy's name. How do you pronounce his name?
Erdogan, thank you.
Erdogan. It sounds like something from...
It sounds like something from the Lord of the Rings,
yes,
man.
Exactly. Erdogan. So I'll probably confuse that now. Anyway, Erdogan had a fallout with one of his top officials, I guess, years and years ago, called Gulen.
I'm gonna give it a shot. It's Fethullah Gulen.
There you go. Thank you. And it's amazing because he's now being blamed by, Erdogan for this attack. And this dude's sitting here going, hold on a second. It wasn't me. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And they're actually asking the United States to either arrest him or extradite him. That's what they're trying to do. They want to move him back to Turkey. And so then I thought, well, hold on, that sounds really, really bad. And what evidence do they have? So, okay, let's say he did orchestrate the whole thing. Let's just pretend for a second.
Okay.
And let's go into a fantasy world.
So this is a legitimate coup that this guy set up.
This is a legitimate coup that he set up from America. Because we know that does happen for terrorism, right? I mean, think about it. They flew planes into the building. That guy didn't actually do it. Somebody else did all of that. And so it could happen. This guy could have orchestrated a coup from overseas. So let's say he did. If they have evidence for it, present it, and I think that the United States should be involved in punishment. Now, I don't agree that he should go back to Turkey specifically, but I do agree that we should look into punishing, because we can't have somebody orchestrating massive government takeovers without organization through in my opinion, the European Union.
I was just going to say, look at the World Court, look at the United Nations Security Council.
Yep.
The two things that the United States completely ignores whenever they rule against us and whenever they have human rights rulings that they want us to, and we don't ratify. But yeah, so the rest of us, the rest of the world, Mr. Politicians and Mrs. Politicians of the United States, if you ever get, because I mean, we've had the Pope and the President listen to our show, that, I mean, the U.S. is usually considered a rogue state and doesn't follow along, but you and I obviously would say that it's better that we have this oversight of, mostly sovereign nations keeping an eye on this kind of situation where someone tries to overtake a sovereign country. They try to keep the people safe. Like I can understand, power, power overthrows and internal politics, and hopefully they don't get violent. But let's just protect the people at the bottom of the chain who are getting bombed, killed, and murdered in the streets. That's the issue, and that I hope the UN, NATO, anybody who was involved in any kind of oversight would help us cover.
And so that's my thing right there, and so, okay, if he did do it, then let's get the evidence. But we shouldn't expedite, however you say it, get rid of somebody out of the United States and send them back to Turkey without fucking evidence.
Yep.
We can't do that. That's insane. That's just crazy to me. And so then I looked at it a little bit farther. Well, guess what? Gulen, and they call them Glulenists, are the secular side. And my bias is going to come out here, right? It will, because that's the secular side of things. That's the secular aspect of Turkey. The secular Muslims, if you want to call them that.
Or at least a moderate. I mean, he's one of the moderate Muslims that we always hear about. It's like, okay, moderate Muslims, how about you guys start saying that you're not happy with this Islamic extremist stuff that's happening? Well, this might be a case where the guy's like, no, I'm a moderate Muslim, and I want this, Islamic dictator the hell out of this country. And so, I mean, he's kind of pulling at my heartstrings, dude. I can't lie on that one. If it's legit, I kind of agree with him as far as his takeover, even if it is an aggressive takeover.
See, and I don't know if I agree with you on that, but we could get into that in a second here, and we are going to have to go to a commercial break really quick here. But before we go into our commercial break, I wanted to make a big statement here, because for me, they're accusing somebody without evidence, or if they have evidence, they're not presenting it. Where's your presentation of evidence? Show us. I don't see why we wouldn't do it. And if an organization is based on his beliefs, they can't officially claim it's him unless they have proof. It'd be like when we went into, Iraq and said, hey, you got weapons of mass destruction. Well, what's the evidence?
When we put
hold on. Shuffle. Hey, remember 9/11? Remember 9/11? And that's exactly what this is to me. Is they got a guy that's going on conspiracy, and maybe he's right? But then you look into Erdogan's party, right? They're Islamics. They don't want a religious state per se. That's what they claim. But they adhere to more conservative Islamic tenets.
Oh man, hard. They're very hard into that. And so
their whole political party is based around that. Even though Turkey is technically a secular state, that's what they're basing all that on. And so then the wheels of the conspiracy start to churn, right? Because now things are adding up, right? You've got a guy that's been extra, and this guy hasn't even been around. It's not like he just left a year ago. I mean, we're talking years ago, back in the early 2000s is when he came to the United States.
For Gulen?
Yes.
Okay.
And so even if he is pulling the strings, we're talking he's been long gone. He hasn't been inside of Erdogan's candidacy for years.
For a reason, because he probably would be murdered immediately if he stepped foot in that country.
Yes, even before
now.
But
that's another indicator when it comes to stuff like that. It's like if the person in charge of your country will murder any kind of dissent, that's probably a good indicator of a lack of humanitarian aid and good things happening on that guy's watch.
Yes. And so as we go out to commercial, we're going to come back and talk about Turkey because we didn't get through everything, and I really like Turkey. I really do. This is a very interesting topic that we have to talk about. And so as we walk away from this portion, come back into it, when we come back, we're going to talk more about Turkey. We're going to talk about FETO, what that means to Gulenist, and then we're going to talk about what he's going to do. Erdogan wants to reinstitute the death penalty and how disgusting that is. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
This is Heretic Woman, part of the panel of Holy Crap, the Vlogcast, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hi, this is Trav Mamone of the By Any Means podcast. Join me every week as I talk to activists, bloggers, and podcasters about the intersections between social justice and humanism. Go to www.byanymeans.com, that's by spelled B-I, to listen to the podcast and read my blog. Besides, aren't we all a little bi-curious?
As if you couldn't get enough of us already, make sure you check us out on Twitter at CellarDoorSkep. Follow us, share our tweets, and hell, tweet at us any questions you have using Cellar Door Skeptics hashtag. Remember, follow us on Twitter for all our recent shows. Now, back to the show.
This is C-Web from ParanormalSkepticAcademy.com, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics. Prepare for the revolution. What's that?
Now, back to the show.
And that brings back our old, familiar music from Atheist Analysis, Chris. Remember that? Remember
Deja
that
vu
music?
and PTSD flashback moment here.
And that sounds...
A Jaeger.
That was the Jaeger bomb. A little bit warm, but nonetheless good. So let's get back into this Turkey thing, because for me, this whole coup... There you go. Maybe you should drink to that. The whole coup is bothering because whether it's staged or not, there's a reason people are rallying against those in Turkey. There's a reason people are going after those people in Turkey.
In the streets.
Yeah. And so there was an article from The Atlantic that I got into called Turkey is in Serious Trouble. And they kind of go back to the rise of Turkey, the likelihood. I guess Turkey's had coup happen for, I don't know, every 10 years to 20 years?
Yeah, it's a pretty rough region in general. I mean, just look at the remnants of Kurdistan and a lot of the Soviet breakups. These areas are very tumultuous still, and we sit over here in our relative comfort of the United States, and we assume that the rest of the world is okay. We got cop problems and stuff where people are being shot or whatever, but our level of problems, like the Louis C.K. thing, is like white people problems. It's a terrible thing to think of, but when most Americans and people where we are experience what we experience, we have no clue what it's like to deal with such an unstable region, unstable governments. These types of things are something that they have to deal with on a regular basis. And government overthrows and instability and or a new party coming in causing a complete 180 of any kind of governance. These are things that happen relatively regularly, if you would call decades regularly. And these things have happened in Turkey. It's been an area of incredible unrest. And I would just like to see them find themselves into pro-democracy thing like we always talk about in the United States. Like, we want to, spread democracy. Well, the American way of spreading democracy isn't quite the way that most, humanists would do it. So we see these events happening, and we have no other response than just like to feel bad. That's like something horrible is happening. Purges where people are being murdered and disappearing, like the Soviet Gulag, right? People disappear from the streets. Teachers and political leaders, important people, are just essentially silenced. So the coup and the response to the coup, the government response to it, is where it really draws me in, because regardless of whether or not it was planned or if it's a legitimate, this was a real coup and it failed, what has happened now, the response that the government is giving is, what really fears me here, or what really scares me, because, they've been completely wiping out large segments of the society. And
yes. And they've been doing it for a while, though. So, he's
been building up. That's why the military.
He has.
That's why the military wanted to revolt, because he's been building up this transfer into an Islamic State.
Yes, and that's actually what these articles are talking about. And we probably have a little bit of bias because we are American and we're white and we're on this side of the.
And we're not being really threatened by anything.
Yeah, we're not. But when we look at a lot of this and the decisions that are made, and this is why I believe religion poisons everything, and I'm sorry, but I just do.
Hitchens.
It's because they're moving towards a more theocratic state. And they've been doing that for a while. They've been doing this. It isn't something that's new. Though, I'll be honest, Erdogan he stood against ISIS. He has. He has not sided with ISIS. So he hasn't gone that far into it, right?
Well, yeah, I would say he hasn't sided with ISIS, just like the Saudis haven't sided with ISIS. Like, you can behead people and murder all kinds of dissidents. Yeah, you may not have agreed specifically with the tenets of the Islamic State, but let's face it, you guys are close enough that I'm going to say you're probably secretly, yeah, that's okay, that's fine. If everything has gone by the book, by the Quran, and by Sharia law, and people are getting killed in the streets because of their dissidence from my particular belief, that's an okay thing. I would say that they're probably not complaining or horrified by what ISIS is doing.
Yeah. And so what I was talking about a little bit earlier is that the one political party was basically being replaced by the other one, and he basically called and said, no, you're going to do it this way. And this is how you're going to do it, and you're going to elect the person I want. And that's disgusting. That's wrong. I don't agree that we should just elect specifically anybody the people say, because, look, people want Trump, and I don't want Trump at all. Though that's an interesting conversation, that if the majority of the people are stupid enough to back Trump, is that something we should just allow, let society fail, and rebuild from there? I don't know. That's a whole nother topic.
We actually have a planned segment in the future that we talked about a little while ago, that we're gonna talk about, letting America burn, so to speak, and see whether or not that's something that's a viable option. If we could, pick up from the ashes like a phoenix and build, something better after that. But this Erdogan, this revolutionary situation when we tried to take over, and then the government retaliated and essentially has been purging people. I shared in one of the BBC articles, the purge is widening into the education sector. And this is the biggest thing that I've been so scared of, because what's the best way to convert the country to your cause?
You're right. I think you're skipping over yourself a little bit, Hank. I think you're moving a little too fast. Because you're right, because the coup is pushing, and it is basically taking over and changing things, and that's what's happened.
Well,
now people are now scared. Hold on.
The failure of the coup is letting the military then respond harshly.
Yes, and that happens. That happened in the United States for 9/11. They struck. We wanted to immediately strike back, and the actual science behind this, shows that that's what happens. Right? All of a sudden, people are going to be very emotionally drawn to it, and a lot of us. I don't know if I did, because I was only 17 at the time, but a lot of people are drawn to, fuck you, you came and you tried to kill our people, why would you do that, therefore we're going to go kill you, without even thinking about the larger measures. Hey, what have we been doing for hundreds of years? Killing people in the Middle East that doesn't agree with Israel. We've been doing the same things.
That's the whole idea behind the false flag argument, is that by using a false flag, what you're doing is consolidating the will of the people. You're manipulating and moving it to where you want it to go. And so But one of the things we have to remember here is that it's not the will of the people that is causing these changes in the Turkish government. So what Erdogan's power level is that this coup happened, and whether or not it's real or not, the results of this event, real or not, is that people are disappearing. People are being kicked out of their positions. People are being restructured and moved around in the government. And the government is further clamping down, further becoming more the way he wants it to become.
Okay. And so I got a question, Han. I got a question that's tangent to this. And you're right. They are. They're taking people and removing them. They've removed thousands of people from their positions. America has stood behind Erdogan. I think that's how you say it.
That sounds like a Star Trek name now.
It does. But people are backing Mr. Erdogan. Whatever his name.
People
People
call
are
him
backing
Easy-E.
him. Yeah, no. And Obama even came out, him and Kerry came out, and they basically said that they stand behind a democratic nation.
Yeah.
But in a democratic nation, they're removing people from power, right? That's what they're doing. They're just eliminating them from power. And the biggest question is, in America, is that what could happen too? Could that happen? Could they all of a sudden turn around and go, okay, if there was a coup in America, would the president and all of them be able to say, yep, we think you're involved in the coup, boom, we're moving you from power.
Yeah.
And if they do remove you from power, what are they doing? In Turkey, they're jailing. How is that democratic?
Yeah.
That's not what they would do in America. I hope that let's just say Trump gets in power, right? And a bunch of us try and go overthrow Trump because we hate him. And then they wouldn't take all of us and just throw us in jail. They would immediately and they would look at the evidence.
No.
And they would say, what does the evidence show? Then let's prosecute. Then let's arrest. Let's not turn it into this, let's shoot people and kill people and imprison people. But that's almost what Turkey's doing. They're almost doing something undemocratic to try and remain democratic. And that doesn't compute. That doesn't equal each other.
Yep, this is a situation that the United States has found itself in, the double talk, the double think, multiple times in the history of the country. I mean, just in recent history, think about, we completely and totally skipped the idea of due process with the Guantanamo Bay situation. I mean, how many people were just immediately just dumped in that waste pit and tortured? Enough that is a major, problem as far as the world court was concerned, where they condemned the United States, and the U.S. said, we don't really care what you think. There's a bunch of situations the United States has done things like this. I mentioned it last week on the show. The United States global foreign policy when it comes to the Southern American states, so Central America and Southern America, Ecuador and San Salvador. Like, the U.S. was supportive of incredibly violent regimes, and they said we're promoting democracy abroad. Well, these regimes, much like Erdogan's, that been getting military aid and all kinds of things from the United States and support from the United States because they're a client state. This is a state that's like, okay, well, we're kind of going to go along with the United States perspective as to what the world shape should look like, and so we're going to continue supporting them. There's critiques against the Israeli humanitarian perspectives, and I mean, the World Court has condemned Israel as far as their humanitarian some of the things that they've done to the Palestinians. Well, Erdogan is kind of the same way. We haven't condemned the Israelis. We haven't condemned Erdogan because, let's face it, they're doing kind of what we want. They're acting in ways in which we want to. This is American imperialistic ideals. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of scary about that. Which is, I would suspect why the U.S. hasn't outright condemned, then basically purging the country of its education sector, of any kind of dissidents and secular portions of its government. They're just removing the people who don't agree with them. That's the best way to create, a totalitarian, authoritarian government. It's just removing people. If the U.S. isn't, I guess, arguing against that, then what are we doing to promote democracy abroad?
Exactly. And if we look at it, the Atlantic had a very good statement, right? They said the source of Turkey's dangerous polarization is Erdogan himself. Erdogan has won successive elections since 2002 and built a cult of personality as a authoritarian underdog, portraying himself as a victim who is forced to crack down harshly on those whose conspiracies,
Air quotes.
air quotes, undermine his authority. And that's what's happening. That's what we're seeing. He had to use FaceTime. But they had it all under control within a day, right? It was all under control within a day. There was a lot of deaths, but not as many as there could be. And there was tons of arrests. And reports are coming out now that they're treating some of these captives horribly. They're just throwing them in prisons and not feeding them and starving them, trying to get people to make confessions and all sorts of crazy stuff. It's like waterboarding. It's like Dick Cheney who just went over to fucking Turkey and decided he's like, hey guys, I got some secrets for you.
Like
I know I can't talk real good, but I got some secrets, and we can get the confessions we need. That's what it feels like, Hannah. I mean,
they're gonna change Turkey to Halliburton. They're gonna name it Halliburton. All right, well, first off, we've got this is a clear case of a guy who's essentially grasping for power, growing in power, and this country is becoming less democratic, more authoritarian, more totalitarian, more theocratic. There's no question about this. We can see this evidently in what they've been doing. And the evidence that I was talking about a little bit ago about what's the best way to convert the people to double think, to convert the people to think the way you want them to think, which is one of the most important things that a society can do, is control the way its people think. That way you can kind of flush out any kind of dissidence from in dissent. Well, more than 1,500 university deans have been ordered to resign, and licenses of 21,000 teachers working in private institutions have been revoked.
Wait a minute. So it's not just affecting government officials.
No.
Is this all within the last week that they're doing this?
Yes, they're reforming the country, the way they teach children, the way they teach youngsters, the way they teach teenagers. Think about it for a second. Like, imagine if you had completely been, when you were younger, all of your teachers, all of your stuff had been wiped out, and you were given nothing but this satanic temple's professors. Like, what would that do? That would change the way you think. We all know what this is. This is basic indoctrination. What they're trying to do is they're trying to make an indoctrination basically a formal tenet of the country. And by doing this, by forcing deans to resign and removing teachers from the workforce, you're going to put the ones you want in. You're going to have a filter to get what you want. And these kinds of things here, these are things that are in the future are going to be changing the way that secular foundation of the country is. That they're probably going to do some historical retelling, much like in the state of Texas, where they say that Moses was kind of a real dude, and he's just as real as Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, and I mean, these kinds of historical retellings, like, these are regular things that are considered normal in theocratic nations, and this is something that the United States conservative and Christian conservative specifically would do if given the power to do it, but we have our checks and balances. Well, imagine a theocratic group that wants to instigate a theocratic nation. Give them the power to do it. What are they going to do? They're going to do that. That's what Erdogan and his group have done now that they've had this failed coup. They're like, okay, well, we have this moment where everybody's kind of pissed off that supports us, and so they're going to support us. They're going to be okay with us taking a little bit aggressive measures to change the way this country is structured.
Because it's not super extreme, right? I mean, it's not like
aggressive.
they're putting people in gas camps yet. It's close. No,
yeah,
not quite.
Not quite.
And the UN is actually urging Turkey to uphold the rule of the law and defend human rights. They're telling them not to seek revenge. That's exactly what the European Parliament official, Martin Schulz, has said. And he's accused Turkey of basically doing that. And you know why? Because the head of Turkey is basically saying, well, we're going to consider the death penalty. And it's like, hold on. Did you have the death penalty before? Oh, you got rid of it? You got rid of the death penalty. Oh, what's one of the big things to be part of the European Union? Which, by the way, think about it, Hannah. America can't be part of the European Union if we have a death penalty still. That's a rule. Isn't that crazy? That's a whole nother topic. That's a whole tangent that I could go on.
Well, that's the rogue state thing I was talking about, the rogue state stuff. The United States loves to be one of the big people that are part of the United Nations, but we don't like when anybody disagrees with us. And the European Union, if we ever found some kind of trade agreement that merged us with the European Union single market, good luck getting the Americas to actually do what everyone else is supposed to do.
Yes. And that what's sickening here, in my opinion, on this side of things, what's sickening is the fact that they are even considering the death penalty at this point. You can't get evidence this fast. I'm sorry. Look how long it takes to convict somebody in the United States. And maybe we suck at what we do.
Well, people are on death penalty or on death row for years and years and years, man.
That's not what Turkey's going to be talking about. They're not going to let somebody stay. They want swift justice. They want somebody to take the blame. And this leads us into what we'll talk about at the end of the show with the Trump segment here. Because if you listen to Trump's speech, it reflects some of this stuff, man. It's some of the fear tactics. We need to stop the wall. We need to build a wall. We need to stop immigration. We need to ban people from coming from countries that have terrorism. Well, every country has terrorism. Every country has that. But God damn it, what are you going to say? Nobody can come to the United States? But that's the sickening part, is that Turkey is genuinely considering doing something to take care of these over 9,000 people they've arrested.
Oh, man.
That's a lot.
So we're talking like, this is not so much instigating or bringing back the death penalty, just death penalty, yay. This is death penalty for the people involved in the coup.
Yes.
Okay, so like we're talking like, okay, you're part of this coup, you're just going to be hung out in the streets, just like they do with Saudi Arabia when they find someone who's suspected like an atheist. That sure sounds like a witch hunt to me, but either way, back to, the number of people. You said 9,000 people. On BBC, they have 6,000 military personnel have been arrested, nearly 9,000 police officers have been fired, 3,000 judges have been suspended, 1,500 employees of Turkey's finance ministry have been dismissed, 492 have been fired from the Religious Affairs Directorate, and then more than 250 of Mr. Yildirim's office have been removed. This is a purge to remove any kind of, well, you're not part of the you're not part of Big Brother's party. You're not part of Oceania. You don't love the system and you don't love Big Brother as much as you love yourself. Well, then you're going to be, you're going to room 101 to be reminded that 4 plus 4 or 2 plus 2 is 5. This is Big Brother. This is like if someone said, here's book 1984, Orwell gave you a manual on how to create a country, and this is the kind of stuff that is human psychology, human control, adjustment, reiteration, indoctrination. It's horrible that this is going to be happening, and we're looking at the highway to hell. As far as I'm concerned, as far as bringing back death penalty, quick, swift death penalty, or what probably would be mistakenly ruled on a majority of those bases.
Yeah, and that's what's disgusting here, folks. Is we're hoping beyond hope that Turkey will change their mind, that they'll be a little bit more democratic. But even the latest statement, and we got to get out of this segment and move on to a commercial real quick. The latest statement is they're accusing the nephew of Gluten, who we talked about at the beginning of the episode, of running this coup. And that's sick, because they don't have evidence for it. But maybe soon they will. But if they don't, they should not be convicting these people. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hey guys, this is Wyatt Mathers from the Atheist Avengers podcast. You are listening to the Cellar Door Skeptics. Prepare for the revolution.
Hi, this is Dan, Brian, and Matt with the Godless Revolution podcast. We've had a lot of great guests on this show, such as Russell Glasser, Dan Arrow, Brian Fields, David Silverman, Doug Mesner, a.k.a. Lucian Greaves, and Joey Kirkman, whom we love a lot.
We've also had a lot of really cool local guests. And we're a podcast that likes to fight for the separation of church and state and against anti-skepticism of all kinds.
You should give us a listen, because if you don't, you're going to be really sad.
Make your ears happy. Listen to the Godless Revolution podcast.
If you guys like what you're hearing on Cellar Door Skeptics, please consider sponsoring us on our Patreon page. Our goal at Cellar Door Skeptics is to help promote more science, skepticism, secularism, and humanism in the world. We want to create better content for our podcast and for you, the listener, all while trying to help promote local activism. We're going to strive to make better podcasts, and I'll tell you what, we're even going to contribute some of the proceeds to charity. So please join us over at Patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics to make sure that you sponsor us for as little as $1 an episode. Thank you guys so much, and prepare for the revolution.
This is Deborah McTaggart from Beyond the Trailer Park, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Currently, bacteria have shown promising and significant potency in eradicating and established tumors found in preclinical mouse tumor models. Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. This is the science portion. The portion Chris just absolutely loves. And I do too.
Yeah,
I like the science too. But he just loves the science. He had a previous show called Heretical Minds where they did an hour of science talk, and that's all they did. And he just loved it. So we include science segments every time. Make sure if you have a certain science segment you want us to do some research on, let us know. Send us an email at cellardoorskeptics@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook and send us a message. Let us know what you want us to do, and we'll do it. So we have a couple of them scheduled, but in a month we will have free time.
Unless your suggestion is awesome, then we'll do it immediately.
If you like message us and you're like, hey, can we understand how Noah's Ark is a factual thing? We ain't gonna do that. We're not gonna do that because it's not factual. There's no facts in it.
Well, because they find it every 2 years, and then they have to recant their findings. Because let's just face it, they found dirt on a hill. And they said, well, we don't understand how radiometric dating works. So we think, nope, we're sorry. We'll find it again next year, and we'll go from there. No, this is real science. We're going to be sourcing some stuff from, like, I heard about this topic when I was listening to the Nature podcast, and the Nature Journal is awesome. It's British, and if you listen to the podcast, it's just British people talking, so it's like listening to really smart people. That's an American bias. I understand that, but I can't help it. The British accent. Listening to Richard Dawkins' book, listening to him talk, it's like listening to smart people. I don't really understand why, but the Nature podcast, this particular topic, we're talking about bacteria existing in cancer cells and then using and modifying that to our advantage. It's an awesome. I mean, this is really cool tools and future, let's say, hopefully future cures and something like that. So this one here, what they're doing is they found that bacteria just happen to exist inside cancer cells in places where we wouldn't really expect them to exist. So there's a variety of ways in which they think it happened. Like cancer and the bacteria kind of start off together, and then the bacteria is incorporated into the tumor, and it's just in there, but it's really not any functional part of the bacteria or of the tumor. It's just there. But they didn't think that anything could live in there, no oxygen, and it's just a deadly environment. So there's been these new studies where these people have been trying to modify bacteria to do whatever we want, the genetic research. And in this case, it's a kamikaze mission. I mean, we're talking fly the plane into the evil doer's tumor and explode that thing. This is one straight case, Japanese Hannah, here.
That's one case I can actually approve of using drones.
Yeah, and that would be the best drone mission ever. Like they're like, yeah, we're gonna take this kamikaze, fighter bacteria and fly it into a tumor and cure you of cancer.
So instead of bombing Syria, instead of bombing Syria, maybe we should be spending more time financing people to kill tumor cells. That's where assured money should go.
Without a doubt.
We could probably bring around world peace if we could cure cancer someone.
Yeah. Probably. And, we'd take a few bucks out of a really, really rich group of people's pockets, but why not? Why not? Let's just get rid of it altogether and maybe we can move on to the real important things like a harmonious society and no more war and all that kind of stuff.
But then you're going to usher in a one world nation. What did we talk about a couple episodes ago on Crazy Shit Chris Used to Believe?
I'm not sure. The
you don't
one
remember?
world nation.
One world nation leads to the Antichrist. That's what it leads to. And an Antichrist will have 1,000-year rule, and then Jesus will come back according to predestination as blah, 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 blah.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'm willing to risk it. I'm willing to risk a one
be
world
dead, right?
nation of peace and prosperity, and then maybe this Jesus guy will come back. I keep hearing he's coming back in like every other year, but maybe he'll come back and change stuff. But after 1,000 years being war free, we could be able to be like, yeah, that's old news, dude.
So hold
no
on, I'm
big
going to
deal.
go on a little bit of tangent here, though. Think about this, right? He comes back. The Antichrist goes into power, and it's 1,000 years apiece. 1,000 years apiece. So in the Bible, the antithesis of Jesus brings 1,000 years of peace and prosperity to the world. Think about that.
And then Jesus...
Think about that when that was written. What does that say? And then Jesus comes back and says, you're the Antichrist, you're evil.
And then Revelation starts with like the 700 dragons and shit. Is that when the...
Yeah, because then Satan's like, well, fuck you, you called me out, I'm going to bring everything. And you know what how about this? The Bible talks about totalitarian atmospheres. We're turning this into a damn biblical segment, but that's what they do. They talk about how he brings about world peace by executing all the Christians. Look at Left Behind series, right? They talk about that, and they talk about how the fact that basically if you don't fit into their little regime, right, if you don't hit that, stupid 1984 theme, they get rid of you. They get rid of you. You're not part of their society. And they use that. And so that's how supposedly it brings upon peace. But you and I both know if we did that, that wouldn't be peace. That's North Korea. There's no peace there. There's no prosperity there.
No.
It would be an illusion. So the only way to get peace, it seems like, if we went to a truly socialistic...
Yeah, well, I mean, we're looking at, the type 0, type 1, type 2, type 3 societies where we moved on past this weird divide between humans and everything like that. I mean, these are deeply philosophical arguments. I mean, cancer could be the start of that. Let's say solving cancer and curing cancer could be the first step, because that's what it is. From the type 0 society to a type 1 society, we've essentially found our way out of that biological tunnel. We've found our way away from that. That we can't die from normal deaths and stuff like that. We've moved on. We're semi-immortal. We've cured biological issues and stuff. That sounds great. So this study is a great piece of evidence. This is more of the scientific method working here. Like, people found bacteria in tumors. They said, well, what can we do with that? Well, we can genetically modify that. We can change these things. And that's the beauty of science and the scientific method and future learning, is that we can change. With the static theocratic doctrine, there's not a whole lot of change happening there. Nobody's going to solve cancer. They're going to cure it by prayer, and we all know that prayer isn't exactly going to do a whole lot, because we've actually tested it.
Why don't we pray right now, Chris? We could pray that we'll be millionaires by the the end of the year. What would you like to pray about that?
I would love to pray about that, but you know what? It's only going to be positive reinforcement, because if it doesn't happen, then I'll be like, oh, well, prayer doesn't work. But if I pray and it does work, holy crap, prayer works. You forget the negatives and remember the positives. We've got a whole bunch of what are the John Edwards, I can talk to dead people stuff like that.
But these articles, and we'll start with the ones you linked, and we will have the actual scientific side of this. There is journals that we're going to include that I don't know if we're supposed to have or not, but we found them. And what they talked about is engineering microbes, basically to create like dormant, I don't know what they want to call them, dormant bacteria that will activate if the cancer becomes active. Because technically 50% of us are going to be diagnosed with cancer at some point in our life. We have cells that are mutated, that are just waiting to be activated in some way, shape, or form. And that's the shitty part about cancer, is nobody knows how they're activated. I mean, look at Samantha. She was a perfectly normal individual, and all of a sudden one day the cancer hit. You couldn't tell. There was no in-between, where it was like halfway, you're like, hey, she looks like she's getting really worse, we should go see a doctor. It was no boom, within like a week or two, that's what it was. And so what they're talking about is taking microbes and these bacteria and fixing them and to put they call it a snooze button. Maybe we should name the episode Snooze Button. But that's what they're doing, is they're creating a snooze button so that when we give them certain drugs that they'll release and attack the cancer. And that's genius, because you could do that for almost everything. I'm fat. I have a high probability I'm going to get diabetes at some point in my life. I'm breaking the fourth wall here. If you don't know what I look like, go on Facebook. You can find me. But I'm not some super handsome, debonair individual. I'm fat. But
no, we don't have to lift the fat folds up to power wash you in the yard.
True. That's true. I'm not that fat. I only weigh like 220 pounds. But still, the whole thing is I have high blood pressure as well. If they could program different bacteria, send it into your body, and then allow it to go boop, and it takes care of some of that, that's genius. We'll not only be able to allow people to live longer, we'll be able to attack cancer a lot faster on that front, which is the more important thing, honestly. High blood pressure won't kill you if you're regulated and do all these things. Cancer will. Cancer has a higher probability of killing you than high blood pressure does.
Yeah, the whole idea is essentially isolating and using one particular biological device, these bacterial cells, changing them, using their organics and using their genetics to do what you want them to do to help us fight. But we're essentially using nature to fight nature. Protein misfolding, cancer cells creating mutations, normal cells mutating into cancer cells. These are all things that are naturally happening regularly. There are some things that we do that cause them to happen more. I mean, alcohol, in the most recent study, said that alcohol is actually a cause for a lot of esophageal cancers and
you're
stuff.
Full of shit.
No, I'm serious. It was a really big. They've been finding studies. It's preliminary stuff similar to nicotine and smoking and cancers and stuff like that. So we're essentially learning more about what cancers form. So these types of things, we're learning what it is, how it forms, how we can fight it, and then learning these tools to help adjust it. In the future, transhuman style, right? Transhumanist style, maybe we'll be able to just circumvent the whole idea of a protein misfold, a cellular mutation that turns into a cancer. That's whatever. That's no big deal. You go to the doctor, you get a checkup, you take a few pills, or you have some kind of special radioactive treatment, and you're done. It's an outpatient procedure. That's the goal of this type of stuff. So what they're looking at is they're using these new tools. They're using this bacteria where they can control it. They can send it into tumors in mice and disrupt the whole idea of the cancer cells spreading, moving, metastasizing, which is spreading to a new place and becoming incredibly malignant. They're trying to stop this in animals and mice or whatever. Well, hopefully in the future we'll see some humans trials when it becomes considered safe enough to try in humans, and this will be a cool new thing that maybe this will save the life of some young person who has such a horrible disease such as cancer. And I would support this 100% for the 1 to 2 people that this could save that are right on the brink when it's initially initiated, when its very first trials are set up. Because let's say this was my daughter, this was someone in my family, my father, my mother, or me. I would subject myself to these new tests because I trust science to do what is right. I trust the checks and the balances to make sure this is not a horrible thing that's going to make it worse. And the hope that in the future, they could learn from my situation, and they could learn from any kind of test, and maybe we can solve this problem, man.
Exactly. And what these articles are talking about is using widespread bacteria, using a different view, understanding it differently. Because what is given away is basically we all have microbes, we all have bacteria. Bacteria evolves. Different environments harbor different types of diseases. And if we could use bacteria as a programmed drone to go in after the cancer, that would be genius. And you're right, they've only basically researched this in mice. But bacteria has been suggested for cancer treatment for over 100 years, honestly. This is nothing new. And we have an older article called, Bacteria and Cancer Therapy, a Novel Experimental Strategy. And this specific article talks about bacterial toxins and using those to reprogram those for pro-drug therapy. for people through in vitro. And that's what they're testing. Now, they only tested this in mice. And I'll be honest, it's a very complex article. They talk a lot. I don't know, it's like 25 or 30 pages or something like that. And they basically talk about how they can have 4 different sectors, and they can move into different areas, and they can attack tumors, basically. And they go in and they inject, I don't know, I can't even say these types of spores. They're like C. novi T type spores, and they're used with chemotherapy. And the strategy is that if they could take it and create an anti-tumor and the properties of it, but not kill the animals, then in true logic, it should be able to help to shrink tumors, which is the biggest cause of cancer. And what happens with the tumor spreads, obviously. So if they can attack all of them, reduce the spreading, then you wouldn't have the same problem that we have today, right? And that's what this is talking about. And that's what all these articles are talking about. I don't want to spend too much time on the super in-depth, because, I mean, this article goes into literally
this is an actual medical journal. This is a medical journal. This is an actual scientific, publishing. So, like, if you want to check it out, we're going to include all these links in here that we have. 'Cause let's face it, like, there's different levels of education for everybody who's going to be interacting with our show. And if you can read this, go for it. Let us know. Like, tell us some cool stuff that's in here that maybe we couldn't decipher. But if you also, just for reference, you want to browse through and look at some of the images and some of the graphics, because it's important stuff just to get a broad general understanding of.
Yep. So what they did, they have 5 different interventional clinical trials that they've looked at. One is for advanced solid tumors. The next phase they've gone after is head, neck, and esophagus cancer. The ones that they're currently researching is brain tumors in the nervous system. And then they have one for, I don't even know how to pronounce half these words, to be perfectly honest with you, but malignant glioma,
it's malignant glioma, glioblastoma, anaplastic astrocytoma, which is what, as far as I know, that's what Samantha had.
Yes.
And then anaplastic, that's it. Oligodengolemia. I love the scientific words. They just like, how many syllables can we add to this word here?
Yeah. So, but they said with all these ongoing tests that they're doing, they said there is a problem with this, Hannah. The problem that they're having is that the agent and their toxicity at the dose required for therapeutic efficiency, and reducing the levels will reduce efficiency. So if they give them a higher dose of this, they're going to have a 15 to 45% mortality rate. So they haven't been able to, even in mice, create a way that they can create the toxins to not kill somebody every time, but help them. So that's the problem, is what they're using this for, and what's happening from this is they're attacking it, but they have a high risk, in my opinion. 45% mortality is high.
Even 15% is high.
Yeah,
like a 15%. 15 people out of 100 that take this test die. I'm gonna say no. I don't want to take that test.
Yeah, and you're right. And that's the problem that they're having. And until DNA technology is what they're claiming is the big holdup. When DNA technology develops farther, they'll be able to figure out where the functions are, where the bacteria therapy is going. And so basically what they're saying is for further direction. Currently, bacteria has shown promising and significant potency in eradicating established tumors found in preclinical mouse tumor models. However, the successful transition of these pre-trials into clinical practice will depend on the outcome of the clinical trials, which is what they've been doing or they want to do over the next, let's say, 10 years. Amongst all these, certain types of bacteria mediated cancer therapy and immunotherapy are very promising, but since cancer is multifactorial disease, no certain or single therapy is completely suitable for it. But they believe a combination of recombinant DNA technology along with this type of therapy, immunotherapy, applied to the different bacteria will serve as a foundation for the multi-modularity therapeutic strategies for cancer. And the one word that comes out of that for me is recombinant DNA. Because we heard about that in the 90s with Spider-Man, man. That was like a big thing on Spider-Man. Hey, that's how he got his arms and legs. That's why he could stick to walls.
Not gonna lie, I did not expect you to take that one to Spider-Man. No, I definitely agree. Like recombinant DNA and all these types of changes, like learning, adjusting, and following the actual rules of evolution. That's what's happening here. Like we're testing these things by artificial natural selection rules, by what organisms do, what DNA, what RNA, what biological systems do when we make changes, when we make adjustments to the genetics of the situation. This is all deeply, deeply rooted in evolutionary understanding. So the number of people who go through school, the number of people who learn evolutionary traits, the people who learn in college and become good scientists, who learn evolution, who learn why, what, and how it does what it does, are going to be the people of the future who are interested in finding the solutions to this cancer. When we had Abby Smith on, she talked about it. Like, you got to absolutely know what you're talking about as far as evolution is concerned, because she loses it in every single moment of her day as a virologist, as trying to find the solutions using HIV to solve problems. I mean, maybe in the future, her studies and her science will find the solution using the HIV virus to solve cancer, to fight cancer, make a drone program of little T cells that search out, seek and destroy, and kill cancer cells. These things are happening, but we have to have a good, strong scientific understanding. We have to have a new group of young scientists who are going to grow up and find a way to cure this problem. Because like you said, we're looking test 10 years, 15 years out. This isn't something we're going to solve tomorrow. We need a solid scientific understanding in this country. And I just hope that it continues to be an important topic, and then we really treat science the way it should be.
Yep. And as we wrap the segment up, the big thing that I take out of this is that there's three different strains that are coming from this, right? There's three different ways that it's going to kill it, and that's the exciting part. Is that it's not just one way or two ways or any of that shit. There's three ways. They can destroy it by damaging cell membranes. They can get it to try and reprogram it to commit suicide, or to release proteins to stimulate the immune system to attack the tumor. But the best part is science will solve this, not religion. We'll be right back to talk a little bit more about Donald Trump, his coronation, and the RNC. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hello, I'm Miss B. Haven.
I'm Demanda Wright.
And we're promoting secular feminism.
And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
What's something I could do with a very sexy lady friend of mine that people would find provocative, interesting, and entertaining enough to tune in week after week? Oh, I know! A podcast! If you'd like to hear me and Kate be provocative and thought-provoking week after week, join us on the Unbuckling the Bible Belt podcast. We'd love for you to be part of our audiological three-way.
Looking for something new and exciting, or maybe just a change from the old atheist show format? Cellar Door Skeptics Podcast provides listeners with hours of enjoyment each week on Spreaker and iTunes. Check us out as we talk politics, religion, science, reviews of books and music, along with the occasional interview just for a twist. Join Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern as they bring fresh content to you. Walk with us through the cellar door as we help you prepare for the revolution. You can find us on Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, and even on Facebook.
Hey, this is Keith.
And this is Jen, and we're from Not Another Atheist Podcast.
You're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Join the revolution.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptic. We had to do another shot because we didn't get a shot. We didn't get a choice because
you have to do a shot before a Trump segment.
Because it's not just a Trump segment. It's the coronation. And I
man.
actually went into this whole thing, right, Hannah? Like, I spent all sorts of time researching, looking at it.
You mentioned it last time. Like I did most of the link searching and found a pile of stuff. You know what? You did the exact same thing I did last time. You piled up the links for this one. This is going to be a ton of Trump stuff. When people go through the link section, there's a whole bunch of really great sort of anti-Trump, kind of critical of Trump, but it's good information. That's the important thing. We didn't want to just post a bunch of like, we hate that fuzzy-haired freak. Like, no, there's some good stuff in here. We've got PolitiFact in here, NPR fact checking. I mean, this isn't just willy-nilly partisan hate. This is some decent fact checking, and this is what I personally use to try to find places where I have an agreement or disagreement with whatever anti-establishment candidate that's running around, and just this one here, man. This is full of meat. This is a meaty episode here for Donald Trump. He's so bad.
Now, see, and what happened is we just couldn't pass up having this conversation about the RNC, right? We couldn't do it.
No.
Because what's the most interesting thing about Trump's speech? His speeches were given by many other political opponents and colleagues, but none will match, and I'm going to call him this. Here you go. Ba-doo!
Ding ding.
King Trump. Hey, we got effects that we could play for that. There we go. King Trump. Here we go. And I don't want to use King Trump inappropriately, right? I mean, we had to look up what's a monarchy, what's a king, blah, blah, blah. We have to look up this. But we talked about this with Turkey, and that's why it filters into this. And that's why I wanted to do the Turkey segment in this segment. The science is just a relaxation for us, because this is getting me wound up.
This is getting very authoritarian and totalitarian.
Yes.
And Trump is the embodiment of
And think
such
about
things.
it. And so think about this. King Trump, it's appropriate because it signifies the turning of the GOP into jesters, because everybody but Cruz sang the praises of Trump.
I know.
And everybody dismissed Hillary as an evil villain of a rival nation who is invading America, right? And they're creating the hell that we live in, because King Trump, he's important because he wants to establish a theocracy in the absence of the support of him. But his theocracy is not going to be built on Christianity per se. He's just going to use that because that's the majority religion in the United States. Just like Erdogan, or whatever the hell his name is in Turkey. Erdogan, whatever. How he, in Turkey, is doing the same thing. He's taking a religion and saying, hey, this is too liberal, this is creating hell, this is creating issues in our politics. Let's all unite on one front and call it a day. Though I will grant him, and I'm going to say the one positive thing I'll say about Trump this whole time, because I got to compliment sandwich, right? We're going to start off with a positive thing, negative thing, positive thing.
Like, seriously, you're really...
There's a positive thing.
Okay, what is it?
And did you not watch the speech, Anna? Jesus, man.
You
could have watched it online.
I went through the highlights as best I could. I don't have live TV.
You don't have to watch it live. You could have watched it in postpartum. But the one positive thing he said is he talked about LGBT people, right? And it's not in his script. No, it is. And he basically said he supports the rights of everybody, especially the LGBT community. And he stutters when he says LGBTQ. That's how he says it. Yeah. And that's disgusting. But at least he's giving it credit. And then he turns to the audience and he says, they cheered him, right? They actually cheered him. And all of a sudden he goes, well, that's a surprise. Basically, that's a surprise for the Republican Party. I'm glad you're all on board with me. That's a positive. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it was. But in the context that he gave it, he basically said, is like, we're going to protect the LGBTQ community from Muslim terrorists who want to kill you.
Yes.
So,
okay, fair enough.
it was like a nice, like, oh, yeah, oh, man, God damn it. So I get it. Islamic terrorism, it's all bad. But, like, using, the LGBT, it's a bait and hook thing. Like, oh, we kind of like you. Actually, no, we're just going to use you as a nice flag wave so that we can slam down on any kind of border control and Muslims, nobody's coming into the country kind of stuff. That's the way it felt when I saw that topic.
And you're right. So we're going to start with a Christianity Today article. We're going to start there because I think it was relevant, and maybe it's just because I started doing research. I was trying to find a topic about Christianity that was relevant, and I couldn't. I couldn't find one because there was nothing relevant this week, I guess. Joke. Supposed to laugh, Hannah. But in all seriousness, there was a Christianity Today article about Trump and what's the greatest contribution to Christianity, right? Pastors preaching in politics. And that's a controversial issue, and it is. We know this. We know for a fact
it breaks the wall of separation of church and state.
It does.
But...
And Trump supports breaking the wall. Mm-hmm. He does. He goes on to say this. He says this. They have much to contribute to our politics. They have much. I got to do my Trump voice, right?
So much.
Yet our laws prevent you from speaking your minds from your own pulpit. An amendment pushed by Lyndon Johnson many years ago threatens religious institutions with a loss of their tax-exempt status if they openly advocate their political views. I am going to work very hard to repeal that language and protect free speech for all Americans. So I'm going to say, hold the phone, Trump. That's a 90s reference. Hold the phone, Trump. That doesn't protect my free speech, buddy. I'm a part of all Americans, and that's not protecting me. You're saying I want to protect the majority Christian view here. That's what I want to do. I want to make sure that the evangelicals. But you want to know that the funny thing is, Hannah, about this article?
Funny.
If you get all through the article, they talk at the very end. Most of the pastors support his decision to repeal the law. But they say if repealed, we wouldn't use it. We wouldn't go into it. And we don't think this is an important topic. Literally, over 70% of white evangelical voters, who really, in my opinion, aren't very important, but they took a Pew Research Center survey last month, and they basically said that Supreme Court appointments are the most important thing. And the Johnson Amendment's not even on the list. Yeah. They're not worried about whether they're going to preach in pulpits. You know why? Because the fucking IRS is not going after anybody. They're not going, hey, we're going to arrest you. We're going to stop your non-stat. They're not doing anything. The IRS isn't doing a damn thing. So I don't know why, Trump thinks this is an important thing other than it's just like another little notch in his belt.
Yeah, this is a clear case, without a doubt, of him trying to reach to that middle American conservative market. I mean, the numbers are still approximately 70-something% of pretty consistent Christianity throughout this country. And this is his appeal to middle America. You can let your preacher speak however he wants about politics from the pulpit. I would suggest that probably they already do. I mean, they probably talk about gay rights. They probably talk about abortion. They probably talk about these things. Who's watching that? The IRS is barely able to watch these types of things because they don't have to fill a Form 990 out, so they don't have to leave a money trail as to where they send their money. I'm gonna comfortably say that they are very, very comfortable in their position. They don't have to give the government all this information. They're not being censored and being chased down and being censored whenever they try to give their Thursday, Sunday, Friday sermons. This is a fake situation, a fake problem that's being created, but it's also something that they're trying to appeal to the people, the group at hand. If you create these kinds of things, like obviously
if you
with the
create
media,
a problem,
they
have to fix it, right?
Yeah, and that's what I think Trump is doing. He's either falling onto the bandwagon because people have been talking about this for a long time. He's saying, I agree that this is a problem. He's agreeing with them creating this problem. Like Jon Stewart talked about this in one of his quotations before he retired from the Daily Show. He's just like, oh man, Christianity is being attacked all the time in the United States. I wish one day that the United States would allow people to wear their religious symbol around their neck and maybe have the most popular holiday of the entire year be their holiday, and that they could have the last 43 in a row presidents be elected Christians. I mean, this isn't a problem until you call it out and say, okay, well, we feel this is going to be that we're being persecuted. I agree that this. With anybody who's disagreeing with this situation, that this is not a real issue.
Exactly. But that's why I wanted to lead with this, because it almost feels like King Trump here is trying to create a problem that doesn't exist. And like you said, there is reasons he wants to do this, and that's why I want to get into it, because it almost feels like he's taking people and distracting them from the problem. So think about it. If everybody's worried about immigration and the building a wall, he'll take this and he'll go, oh, well, I believe in this too. And the Christians will be like, yeah, he wants to build a wall, but he wants to do this too. Trump could probably easily get this repealed a lot better than he's going to ever get a wall built. No offense. I mean, like, who the fuck's going to pay for a wall, honestly? But
he says Mexico's going to do it.
They're not going to. They've laughed at him. We already had this conversation.
A wake-up call on that one.
And that's the whole thing here, right? That's the whole thing. Is so he's creating this as a way to create a diversion away from his politics. But he's also using it as part of his fear tactics, right? He's saying, hey, look, you've been pushed into a democratic, socialistic, secular society. I'll change that. But he doesn't want to change that in reality. He doesn't want a Christian theocracy. I mean, his 2 Corinthians Bible verses would just make him look dumb as shit. And Ted Cruz, that's the funny thing. There you go. Compliment sandwich. Ted Cruz came out and criticized Trump and told people to vote their conscience. You don't have to vote for Trump or Hillary. Just vote your conscience. It almost sounds like he was making a run for. He's going to create like a third-party run or something here. Because to me, I think Cruz almost ended his political career.
Oh, I know. I guarantee he did. Governor Christie, he essentially handed over his political career to failure. But like Cruz, he went out and a hail of fire. But you know what? If you're gonna go out, I as much as I hate to say it, and I utterly can't stand Ted Cruz, Ted Cruz. I love it. Nobody can ever say his first name. But, I mean, I can't stand anything that he's ever done. Everything he's ever done. The prayer for Texas rain. No, you're an idiot. Sorry. But Ted Cruz, he was right there on that one. He told everyone, no, you know what? How about you think different? Think for yourself. At the RNC Nation, it was the biggest idiot in the electorate. I mean, Ted Cruz came out and said, no, I'm going to think for myself. And then his explanation was he doesn't support people that attack his wife and family and kids and everything. And I can kind of agree with that. But, he really was the only person in the entire our Republican National Convention that just voiced a different opinion. And from what I was told and what I was what I heard online, that he actually had to give his full speech on to Trump and to the Republican convention, and Trump said, "Yeah, go ahead, go through with it." So there's contestants between whether or not Trump knew that was coming, and then Trump knew it actually was coming and said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead, do what you want. It's going to benefit me." So there's some chess pieces moving around here too that we're not really sure of.
Yeah. So if we get into the actual speech, right? So let's get into the speech a little bit because it builds into what we just talked about. We're talking about Trump and what he's saying. And so the first part of his speech, he says, I have a message for all of you. The crime and violence that today afflicts our nation will soon, and I mean very soon, come to an end, right? So the NPR fact checkers, right, they jump in here and they said, well, hold on a second. You can't just say safety is going to be restored.
Yeah.
Because policing, public safety, and the majority of the criminal justice apparatus are controlled by state and local authorities, not the federal government. So it's almost like he's creating a second misnomer here. The first one, he goes, hey, we're Christian, your Christians are being persecuted, right? We got to fix that, but it's not a problem. Right here, he's saying, here, this is a problem, I'm going to fix it, but he can't. The only way he could do it is to abolish state-regulated life and public, what do they call it? Municipal, local authorities, getting rid of them and creating a federal instituted authority, which is what? Authoritarian theocracy, almost. That's what he wants to create.
I mean, he's trying to say that the president has the ability to make all of these authoritarian decisions, who has all of this power. I will agree that, with the presidential powers and executive actions, there's a lot of power that the president has, and the executive actions have actually been argued to have been increased. But we look at people like President Bush and President Reagan versus President Bush and President Clinton. We've seen a very different and lowering number. Reagan and Bush were significantly higher than what Obama has done. So, like, the idea that this narrative, this media narrative that we've been fed, is that presidents have been increasingly forced to resort to executive action to get anything done because of obstructionist governments, obstructionist houses and Congress. Like, this is all part of do you watch TV? Do you hear about this stuff? Okay, do you believe it immediately? Because there's a lot of evidence and information, like groups like PolitiFact say that no, you're actually wrong. This has been something that's been happening for a long time, and this isn't really that big of a deal. And Trump himself is saying, like, all of these things. He's kind of saying what you want him to hear. He's playing the reality television star. I will tell you whatever you would like, as long as you give me what I want. Like, sure, go ahead. You can say that you're going to stop immigrants. You're going to keep all of the terrorists out of the country. You're going to remove any kind of danger from America. Well, that really sounds very fascist and very authoritarian. It's kind of scary because you're not a messianic figure. You're not this one person saved the country that you've been painting yourself to be. And I don't care what Trump says. There's absolutely zero probability that he can solve all of our problems like he's been painting himself to be able to do. And that's the issue.
Who could do that? A king, right? A king could do that.
But even a king with pure and total power, he can't solve all of these problems. What he can do
is squelch them.
He can solve them for a few people and for himself, but he's not going to be able to solve the problems. That's one of the things. Like, you think of serfdom and monarchies and stuff. You have people that were essentially slaves of the state. Those people are experiencing the same kinds of things that the poorest people in the country are experiencing. This isn't a new problem. This is just a new way of describing it. But President Trump, King Trump,
come on,
crowned authoritarian Trump. He's not going to be able to just come in and swiftly solve all these problems. That's not how it works. And like a working government, a working actively democratic government solves these kinds of problems where people have representation and a legitimate voice. This is the kind of stuff that we need, not this guy saying, like, I'm going to solve all your problems. That's scary. It's genuinely scary. I shared this actually when one of the quotes that you mentioned, I have a message for all of you. Well, there's another part in that quotation, or in his speech. He says, I have a message to every last person threatening the peace on our streets and safety of our police. When I take the oath of office next year, I will restore law and order to our country. Okay, great. Sure. You think Obama has his key in his office? He's just like,
he's just like, fuck it.
He's like, care. You know what? It has an on and an off. It's like there's a law and order on, law and order off. And he's just like, you know what? I can't turn it on. I can't do it. I can't. Really? Whatever, dude. You really think that's going to be just this? Okay, I'm just going to turn it on. All the angry people, all the middle American people who are pissed off, all the minorities who have been dejected and left out for long periods of time, they're just going to be like, yeah, cool, Trump's here. We're going to be happy now. It's not going to happen. And there's no key or switch that's going to happen. This is an entire country governance, people being involved in the political system situation. Like, there's no quick fix here. And a guy running around selling this snake oil that he can fix it quickly, less and less makes him, even reliably a viable candidate for me.
Yeah. And so we can move into the open borders situation, right? We're going to have to take a quick commercial break here because we got to keep going with this. I just can't help myself, Hannah. This is more Trump. I just can't help myself.
MOA.
Because he wants to talk about this. He wants to talk about this girl named Sarah who was sacrificed on the order and on the altar of open borders. He said that. He says this. And so when we come back, we're going to talk about immigration, open borders, and what Trump's 10-point or 100-point plan is for the United States. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
This is Ishmael Brown, the HNIC from the Angry Black Rant Podcast, and you're listening to the Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hi, my name's Callie.
And I'm Ari.
If you're like most of us, you're very concerned about the gay agenda's plans for world domination.
Are you tired of seeing glitter all over every damn thing?
Do you hate rainbows as much as any other red-blooded American?
Then we have the answer for all your baseless fears and unjustified paranoia.
Presented exclusively on Secular Media Network, the Gaytheist Manifesto is your source for news, commentary, discussion, and debate at the intersection of the atheist movement and the LGBT rights movement.
You can find us on Spreaker, iTunes, and at gaytheistmanifesto.secularmediagroup.com.
If you're not ready to get in line for your mandatory gay marriage and you're terrified of short-haired women in pantsuits, come have a listen and get up to date on their plans. You'll be glad you did.
Like what you're hearing? Check out more Cellar Door Skeptics every week right here on Spreaker and iTunes. Make sure you come back and check out new episodes with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna. And always, remember, prepare for the revolution.
This is Trav Ramon, host of the By Any Means podcast, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics. Prepare for the revolution. We have cookies.
Now, back to the show.
The number of new immigrant families who have crossed the border so far this year exceeds the total that it crossed in 2015. And we have open borders. We have open borders, and people are sacrificed on the border. So guess what? NPR Fact Check says America doesn't have open borders. We do have restrictions on immigration. And we do have Border Patrol agents who have made thousands of apprehensions this year. So they fact-checked this, right? And the fact-check said that we are going to exceed the apprehensions of last year. That over 40,000 people have been apprehended. And we're slated to hit over 51,000 people apprehended. So they're not just coming into our societies, right? They're not just dumping into our country. But that's what he's claiming.
They're being caught and stopped and returned and, probably attacked and all kinds of horrible things and nobody's monitoring or anything like that.
And so what he tries to claim is that there's an innocent girl named Sarah Root, and she's a 21-year-old. She was killed the day after by an illegal immigrant, right? And he was a second-time offender, and he's now a fugitive. So he says all these things. And I'll be honest, I didn't go into the research to see whether he's correct in that.
But this is an actual study. I remember the story that came out, and this was a big deal because I don't know if you follow a lot of the news stories and stuff, but like one of the things that the media does, and I actually heard it today. There was a killing in Germany. A guy who was a refugee who killed a girl. They were arguing, and then he killed her with a machete and chopped her all up. Horrible things. Well, these are the stories that get reported. So, like in some in parts of the country where there's lots of refugees and lots of immigrants, someone gets murdered. So they're just like, okay, this person was a first generation or they're an illegal immigrant. They killed somebody. That's the story. Not this man killed this woman because this man was horrible. They lead with the illegal immigrant or the refugee status because they're trying to lead you in a specific direction for the narrative. Like, I don't care where you're from. Like, there's in most societies that are relatively industrialized, murder, just killing willy-nilly, it's a bad thing. Like, these stories, like, from a certain perspective, like, I get it. Like, this girl was killed close to the border by an illegal immigrant. But that's not the whole story here. And that's what Trump is holding on to. He's holding on to a very one-dimensional, very two-dimensional aspect on this thing.
He is. And then what does he do? He moves into the economy, right? He just bypasses this. explain anything. What are they doing to prosecute him? And what are they doing to find him? And what are they doing about this? But how many black people have been killed by police this year? And those are government individuals. Police are killing black people at an astronomical rate this year, and yet he wants to bring this point up. Where the fuck is Trump saying about Black Lives Matters? Well, he doesn't talk about the killings. He talks about this. He talks about the economy, that nearly 4 in 10 African-American children are living in poverty, and 58% of the youth are now not employed. So the fact checker said this. They said 36% of African-Americans under 18 were below the poverty line as of 2014. It's not entirely clear what Trump means by not employed, because technically unemployed, which counts people who aren't working and are looking for work. However, the unemployment rate for black Americans 16 to 19 is 38%. So that is true. That is specifically true that African Americans are more likely to be unemployed than was they.
He's overestimating it, though. That's the important thing. He's 20% high according to the government census. There, he's got 58 to 38%. That's, in my book, that's falsification. You can't just jump 20% and just call it, oh, that's just no big. That's just logistics, no big deal, right?
Yep. And what does that lead to, Hannah? King Trump is again diverting from the real problem, right? That's been the on-running theme here. We're seeing it. That's what he's doing. He's diverting from the problem.
Well, I would say this, that, okay, he's saying that African Americans are unemployed. But what would the Trump rhetoric do? What would the Trump campaign do to help young, unemployed African Americans? I'm going to say that very little. They're probably going to slide much more towards the libertarian aspect and saying, hey, you guys should pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get yourself some jobs. Like, they're not going to be out there as like, okay, holy crap, most of the African American youth is not employed. We should try to get them jobs. No, they're gonna say, hey, why don't you guys have jobs? What the hell? All these other white people are working really hard, but not you guys. No, I'm going to say that they're not going to give them the proper respect and proper help that they deserve to get those positions filled or even create those jobs that will employ those African-American youth who are obviously left behind by George Bush's educational system here. I mean, we've got a series of problems that are happening, and I would love to see them employed, but there's nothing I can do as a white cis male. I mean, I can hire as much as I can, but I'm being taxed so hard by the government as a small business owner. You know, it's tough. It's tough to get that thing started. So what could President Donald Trump and his conservative cronies do to help this group?
Well, we don't know, because if we're going according to this, hold on.
I really don't think they would.
If we're going according to this speech, right? You know what he does? He goes into the trade deficit. He talks about how we're losing money and how our budgets have gone through the roof, right? And then he goes into Hillary. Like, so he's not giving solutions here, and you're fine. I understand it's a celebration speech. Well, I get that. It is. You're right. But he's going into Hillary, and guess what the crowd chants, Hannah? Lock her up, right? They want to lock her up, and so. Fine, we could debate that all day long, and I'm not going to, because this is the Trump segment. This is about King Trump, not about, Hillary. So this is King Trump here. And so what he says, I'm certain that it was a decision that Obama truly regrets.
Because he's the head of the FBI?
Yeah, because
he's the one that makes those decisions. I understand, the conservative aspect to try to pin everything on President Obama. Thanks, Obama, because my cookie doesn't fit in my milk glass or whatever. You know what? There's a whole bunch of people
in this country. My weed doesn't fit in its bowl, damn it.
It doesn't. There's a bunch of people in this country. And, I personally don't agree with the FBI director's decision. I think reckless, and whatever. That's my personal decision, though. But, I mean, I'm not blaming Obama for it. I'm saying that the establishment and all those kinds of things, there's problems here that we need to fix. But I'm not going to pick one martyr and try to light him on fire in the front yard of a KKK rally. That's just not how I roll. I mean, David Duke would, and he's running for office right now, and he's a big fan of Donald Trump. So let's stick with the numbers and the things that Trump puts in his speech here, because if we ever manage to complete a speech, I've got a list of scandals and bullshit because we're gonna include the Atlantic.com's article about the scandals, why Donald Trump is an untrustworthy person and all the stuff that he's done in the past that makes him look like a scumbag. And so, I mean, let's keep going through his speech. There's no question he's a scumbag. Let's keep going through his speech, and then if we hit his beauty pageant scandals or his
all right, so let's keep moving because we do got to keep moving. We don't drag everybody out till 5 hours for this episode. I know everybody hates King Trump. We could. So he does. He basically says Obama would be saddened by this, but Obama has clearly endorsed Hillary. I mean, he has, and he's endorsed Hillary over Bernie flat out. Now, I don't think without some reservation, but that's again a different topic. And then he goes in to point out that Bernie Sanders is calling all these bad judgments on her behalf out. And it's interesting because Bernie Sanders goes, my people are not going to vote for you, dude. Yeah, you don't get it. But let's go into actually what Trump wants to change, right? So he goes, tonight, I will share with you my plan for action for America. This important difference between our plan and that of our opponents is that our plan will do what? Put America first.
As any plan for the last 20 years hasn't?
And he goes, Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo. Now, I don't even know if credo is a word.
But he says up so many words.
And then he says, as long as we are led by politicians who will not put America first, then we can assure that our nations will not treat America with respect. And respect is what we deserve. Well, we don't. We're killing people overseas. Yeah. Fuck you, dude. We're screwing people over in other countries. I mean, we talked about this in our immigration segment last week, and it was different than our earlier immigration segments. Last week, we focused on what happens when we send the jobs to Mexico, and then they get prosperous and what they do from there, and they send them to other places, and it perpetuates it.
Well, we also have we talked about Turkey earlier in an episode. Turkey used to be our number one military aid recipient in our global foreign aid. Like, they used to be the number one group, and then guess what? They killed a whole bunch of Kurds, and they got total control of their situation. And then, we moved over to groups in Latin America. We started giving, our number one military aid currently is Israel. Like, Turkey used to be a really big deal as far as our military aid. They're not the best country and best buddies in the world. It's a bit imperialistic and it's a bit non-democratic for what we've done. So when we talk about criticizing America, it's okay. It's okay to criticize the country you're part of. It's okay to criticize the bad decisions they've made. Like, if you're running around saying that America is the greatest thing in the world and America should be number one in the world and America is, America first and make America great again, like, this is a consistent self-repetitive positivity that, let's face it, it doesn't embrace reality because nothing is perfect. Nothing is this wonderful, amazing thing. Because if it was, I mean, we would easily see all of our decisions in Iraq and all those kinds of places that would be justified. We wouldn't have made mistakes there. We would be completely and totally in great shape. So, I mean, Trump is running around just pandering to the people who, on that end, would say that the decisions made in the past are always positive.
Yep. So after he says American people will come first, he says this: my plan will begin with the safety at home, which means safe neighborhoods, secure borders, and protection from terrorism. Then he moves on to the economy. He doesn't tell you how. He just moves on to the economy. And he says, I will outline reforms to add millions of jobs and trillions in wealth to America. Okay, so good for you. Yeah. Then he goes and says, a number of these reforms I will outline tonight. Remember this part right here. And then he says, will be opposed to our nation's most powerful special interests. And if he does do that, I actually agree with him because I don't like big business and special interests. And then he goes, we're throwing money at her. I'm assuming he means Hillary.
Yeah.
Because they have total control over everything she does. She's a puppet, and they pull her strings. This is why Hillary Clinton's message is that things will never change. Note from NPR, they say this: Clinton has reams of plans and proposals to change everything from the nation's immigration system to the criminal justice policies to the way people pay for college. So
No, there's no question.
Right, he could be right in that maybe she really won't do anything to change it, but she's at least proposing changes.
Yeah.
You can't claim she's not doing something when she has proposals for changes. I mean, she has been pulled farther left by Bernie than she ever has been before.
Oh, yeah. She definitely had to concede on education and certain things along those lines. There's no question that, the Sanders movement forced her to become a little bit more progressive when it comes to those kind of things. Like, the Trump stuff that he's got on here, though, like, we're talking about, that she's never, ever going to change whatever. There's a little bit to it as far as, being a part of the establishment. You're going to probably pull for the establishment. You're going to pull for what the consistent status quo is, because that's the human nature, is the resistance to change. She's not going to try to change things very drastically because people naturally react negatively towards that change. The revolutionary aspect of the Sanders campaign and stuff is a bit too much for a lot of people that are already entrenched in politics. And the Trump supporters are also getting that, that deeply entrenched political system. But what they're getting is they're getting the negative aspect, and I would love for them to try to find that, that economic disparagement, a lot of the stuff that drives them towards that hatred of the establishment, to learn that the social programs that benefit all of these things are the things that would help them, as opposed to being angry and finding a scapegoat in, immigrants and terrorists and things that are really not major issues in this country.
And the funny thing here is he does this. He goes, I've embraced crying mothers who have lost their children because politicians put their personal agendas before the national good. I have no patience for injustice. The crowd interrupts him chanting USA, right? And then he goes into this. He says this, how great are our police? And how great is Cleveland? Thank you. So what about the crying mothers? Wait a minute. Yeah. How many times has Trump folded and gone bankrupt? How many people have been fucking unemployed because of you?
Or how many people
What are you talking about? You're holding crying mothers? Come on, Trump. How many people did you unemploy because of your position? How many jobs did you send overseas through trade agreements because of your position? Are you saying you've never used other labor?
Well, he uses illegal labor regularly. I mean, think about it, like a lot of the casino stuff, casino health, casino welfare, like that kind of stuff. All of his failed resorts in like the Florida area. Those things are all the people they hire. They're not hiring white Americans to clean those rooms. He's hiring illegal immigrants. He's hiring poor people. He's taking advantage of the lowest and the people who absolutely will take whatever they can get to survive. There's documented history of the Trump scandals, racial housing discrimination, things that he's done with the beauty pageant scandals, and I mean the mafia tie thing is a little bit far of a stretch for me, but whatever. Yeah. I mean the Trump University thing that's currently happening right now. Yeah, scandals and things along those lines. He's not the most trustworthy businessman that ever existed, because let's face it, in the capitalistic world, when it comes to business and succeeding, whatever, Trump is the kind of guy who does what he has to do to succeed. And I think that is very similar to the way he would treat politics. He's telling you that he's held crying mothers trying to survive. You know what that does to me? That makes me think of, okay, what's the most emotional thing that I can do? Mothers in pain. I will say that I was comforting them. Really? How many times can you see the ultimate nursing nature of Donald Trump stopping on the street to hug a poor woman while he's getting into his Bentley filled with European blondes? This is not the reality of the. This is all fantasy. This is all caricature. This is all reality TV taken for politics.
Exactly, and he goes on to basically bash Hillary, and then he says this, and I'm not going to get into the bashing Hillary part because it's ridiculous. And he says millions of Democrats will join our movement. When he said that, I literally spit my Diet Coke out because I was like, no fucking way,
man.
Huh?
Don't spit on your computer.
It wasn't a computer. We watched this live.
Oh,
I talked the wife into it. We weren't going to, and then we got bored with what was there on TV, and then they just came on. And we're like, And I just raged at it. But he says that millions. So they fact-checked him, right? And they said the recent Pew poll says that 9% of Democrats will vote for Trump. 6% don't know or will vote for a different candidate. But guess what? 85% will vote for Clinton. So think about that. So if you have millions that are going to vote for you, and that's 9%, then what is that, billions that are going to vote for Hillary? So even if we took your math and said, well, that's exactly right?
You know, I will say this. Donald Trump's accountants are probably pretty good at math. He himself, not so much.
So that's the whole thing. You know, we can, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at the Atlantic article right now. In 1991, 1992, 2004, and 2009, Donald Trump has filed for bankruptcy. Yes, that's the guy I want in charge of our economic rebirth in this country, because he says he's going to redistribute all this money and he's going to make the economic the trillions and trillions of dollars. I'm going to say no. More than likely, a lot of his legitimate money that he's made has been through business loopholes and the benefits that we give big business and big business.
He admitted that, Hannah. We heard that in a speech of his. He actually admitted that.
Yeah, he says
earlier in the year.
I've benefited from these things. Like, why not?
And I'll fix
if
them.
you can use the bankruptcy law, why not?
Yeah. So he goes on to say this, and speaking of that, he says, I'm the law and order candidate. If you were the law and order candidate, you would have broken the law before. Come on. Why would you? You can't break the law and then just turn around and say, like, oh, I'm going to be the law and order candidate. He says, I'm going to work to appoint the brightest and best prosecutors and law enforcement officials to get the job done. And he's speaking of Baton Rouge and all these other killings of black people by law enforcement. But guess what? The president doesn't select U.S. attorneys. They do select them, but they only handle a small fraction of violent crimes.
Yeah, we're talking...
Most of the murders and robberies and assaults are done by local authorities.
Yeah, the president is in charge for national-type situations. Very rarely is a murder a national problem. I mean, it's a big deal. It's a federal offense, but it's not a national situation. How often do you hear about President Obama having to make a ruling or find somebody to prosecute someone who's been a serial murderer? That doesn't happen. That's not the way the system's set up. So Trump can tell you that he's going to find unicorns on Jupiter, but you know what? You've got to have some kind of honesty here. You got to have some kind of proof that he's going to be able to do that. And that's kind of what he's telling you here. He's like, I'm going to be able to stop crime. Great. Well, I'm gonna find a little leprechaun with a pot full of gold tomorrow morning. If we both don't have to give any evidence as to our claims, then we're both statistically correct.
Exactly. He then goes on to talk about illegal immigration, which he actually is correct in some of his numbers, that there is a large increase in Syrian refugees. And we had the conversation before whether we should allow this, whether we shouldn't allow this. Where should we go? And we disagree with Jeremiah Bannister from Paleo Radio, obviously, on his immigration reform. Our best bud. On immigration reform. And if you ever listen to this, Jeremiah, yeah, we're calling you out. And we would have you on to talk about this. But the funny thing here that they point out is political fact verified his numbers. But guess what? A month or so before, he claimed 500% increase, right? And they said, well, it's actually 550. You're wrong. Guess what? Now his number is 550. Somebody read that.
Yeah.
Somebody read his correction. They're like, ooh, put this in our pocket.
Well, I mean, you also have to consider that number that they increased there. So, like, we're talking, 1,000 to 2,000 Syrian refugees on an increase here. Like, we're not
500%.
That 550%. That is a media spin because that's a big number. Okay, so if I have 100 people that come in and all of a sudden 550 people come in, yeah, that's a big number. So if I have 500 people come in and all of a sudden you're at 2,500 people coming in, that's 5 times. That's a big number. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at just under 2,000 people. 2,000, okay? In a country of over 300 million people, the 2,000, that's the big deal. That's the danger to our society. That's the danger of these Syrian immigrants coming in to kill all of our women and children. I understand the fear tactic, but let's just face it. The United States has an incredibly deep and difficult process for Syrian migrants to come into this country. They're not just jumping across the border of Canada and flying around in Buffalo. Like this is difficult work, and people spend 1 to 2 years in their process for coming into this country. I understand. Oh, that's a big number and a big increase, but we're not looking at a direct correlation and for a causation of okay, there's an increase in the Syrian migrants, so there's an increase in terrorism. We're not seeing that. That's not a statistical number that we can agree with.
And so, how do we bring it back? How do we wrap it up? How do we end the episode and close it out and talk about what's going on here with King Trump? And we haven't said King Trump in a while, but as we close the segment out, we talk about this. He keeps talking about his wife, his children, which he does all the time. And NPR points this out. They say, think about, why does he want to do that, Hannah? Why would you want to do that?
To appeal to immigrants and people
people you want to keep out of the country, but because they want to make him a human person. They want to create a human element to him. Because if you can take something that's unlikable and make him human, you're going to be more relatable.
Well, yeah, you have to make that hair somewhat human. There's no other way around it. Like that's been his thing. His identification has been his big ridiculous signs of his name and his ridiculous hair. That's how the Americans know Donald Trump. He has to find some way to supersede that. Okay, wow, he actually has some intelligent ideas about this and about that and about this. He's fighting an uphill battle, I'm going to say, as far as getting Americans to believe that he is in control of all of his faculties and really ready to be the commander-in-chief of the United States executive branch. But I understand the marketing behind it. I'm not going to agree with their actual claims, but the rest of the family and stuff, that is an essential marketing tool. But I've seen some things on there. It's like, well, what would you say if President Obama in 2008 was running and it said, well, this is his third wife and however many kids he's had with different women. This is some pretty rough stuff that, well, we're not hearing that critique against Donald Trump.
You were not. But Trump, we got to humanize him. You got to humanize the king, right? You got to make it so that the king is liked and loved by everybody. And he says, don't we love it? Oh, we love defeating people. We love defeating the naysayers, the people that are against us. That's what he says. He says, no longer can we rely on those same people in the media, politics, because they'll just say anything. Because they say, and they want to keep it a rigged system. That's his motto. That's his creed. He wants to tell you America's never been strong. He wants to tell you that America has been weak. And I think America is fucked up. I think America's done some shitty-ass things. I think America needs to focus at home and fix the problems at home before we even get into any of the other gerbalish, jargon, bullshit that sits in it. But without looking at what candidate we're going to be able to support, we have no way of living our lives without decontaminizing Trump. So while he wants to make America strong, proud, safe, and great again, I say to you this. I say to you, do your research, find another candidate, because we can't live in another democracy with Trump at all. Thank you. Have a great night. And remember to prepare yourself for the revolution. Have a good night, everyone.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker. CellarDoorSkeptics.com.